Let me ask you this question about human rights. You've spoken favorably about the right to freedom of speech and other human rights, but I take it you would not assent to the usual list of rights so much publicized these days, such as the right to a minimum standard of living, the right to equality of opportunity, the right to a free education, and so on. Why? What's the basis of the distinction?
Well, there you have a complete contradiction. This concept of rights demands as a right values which do not in fact belong to man in nature. In other words, the right to a minimum sustenance means that a man without any effort on his part is entitled to sustain his life. Well, since nature does not provide man automatically with this sustenance, the only way of maintaining or implementing such a right would be to breach, infringe, and deny the rights of some other man. It means that some other man is charged with the unchosen responsibility to support the man who is guaranteed a minimum sustenance. It means that some men are to be enslaved to the minimum or maximum needs of others. Not only is it a vicious concept, but whichever you might wish to call it, it cannot possibly be called a right. Nobody could, in fact, maintain the right of some men to enslave others and to demand the unearned from them. Since nobody gets any production, any material values, any physical substance from nature itself, nobody has the right to claim any minimum guarantee because it can come only from other men, and nobody can claim the right to enslave other men.
When you discuss in your objectivist ethics the concept of survival, many readers and listeners, I think, misconstrue this in the following way. When you mention the term survival, they immediately think of sheer physical survival, and just that. Nevertheless, it might be argued that physical survival is a precondition of other kinds of survival, and the argument that I've heard from some people goes something like this. At least everybody should be provided for with regard to a minimum standard of living, because you just can't let people starve. If people are permitted to starve, of course, they die, and then no other or more worthwhile form of survival is possible to them.
Well, this argument is a blatant case of simple context dropping. I have gone to great lengths, both in the objectivist ethics and in Atlas Shrugged, to demonstrate what is the meaning of survival, and that sense in which I use this term does not apply to the range of the immediate moment, that it is survival across the whole span of a human life. The brute physical survival of the moment as a standard usually ends with that moment, that it is one of the most disastrous policies that a man can accept. Therefore, to reiterate once more this point, when I speak of survival, I speak of the long-term lifespan survival of a man in every aspect that is open to his choice. And this would mean that at no time can man hold the immediate advantage or survival of any one issue or any one moment above his knowledge of the long-range cost, and that a rational being does not live like an animal on the range of the immediate moment. This is precisely what man's proper survival forbids. Now, when you say that if we do not support certain people, they will die, and therefore nothing else is possible, this is not, first of all, metaphysically an issue open to our choice. Such is man's nature and man's position on earth, that if he does not provide for his survival, nature will not take care of him. Since this is so, the universal rational law of morality applicable here is that every man is responsible for his own survival, and that he cannot become a mortgage on the life of another man. That to have the right of life does not mean that someone else has to lose his right and spend his existence supporting you. The confusion here is between the right itself and the content or the consequence and the result of that right. For instance, if you have the right to live, that means you have the right to work and produce the material goods of your survival. It doesn't mean that somebody else has to produce the result of your right and provide you with food because you need it.
I'm thinking now not so much of the people who are able to engage in productive labor but won't, as of the people who are handicapped and cannot, by their own nature, provide anything at all for themselves.
Well, in that case, and by their very definition, they can survive only by the assistance of those people who are able to help them. They cannot make their need a mortgage or a burden on the men without whom their own survival is not possible. It is in effect, if anyone were sincerely concerned with the plight of the handicapped, who incidentally are a small minority of mankind, but if one were sincerely concerned, then for their sake, if no better reason, one should leave the strong, the productive, the able men free, because they're the only ones who can provide for the handicapped. But then such act can be nothing more than charity. It can only come from the voluntary gift and, in effect, the surplus of the productive man when and if he wishes to help the handicapped. If he has reason to wish it, that may be a very fine act, but what I stress is that it is not a duty on his part and is not a right of the handicapped. A right has to be based on nature. If the handicapped can only count on the kindness of the non-handicapped to help him, he cannot demand it as a right.